Welcome back to another episode of Zero Signal. Our guest today is Iman Ghanizada, who is globally recognized as a cybersecurity leader and rather visionary operator. You were really well known for your work at Google's on atomic security systems, and you have since done a lot more. You've published books, you've really helped shape the industry in a lot of ways, and now here we are in this major transformation from the traditional systems to now agentic security is all everybody wants to talk about. So today I just really want to get your perspective on the state of the market, state of the security as you see it. You come from like a unique perspective. Most people have not dealt or protected the size of breadth and scope that you've worked with. So let's just start at a high level view. When you look at the security market today and you're looking at the CISOs who are being tasked with defending these enterprises, what's your take?
Well, that's a really spicy question to go right into.
Let's go straight in.
I think the first thing we need to do is we need to crack these open and make sure we get the sponsors,
show.
Nice and toasty. Liquid Death. No, great intro. Great to see you both, and obviously this guy is a legend.
Yes,
appreciate that. You didn't get Forbes Tech 30 under 30. 2021.
I'm old now, man.
That was so.
You used to be under 30.
Yeah, you will not find that accolade anywhere on any of my profiles anywhere. I'm like, guys,
we'll be 50 under 50.
Wait, you're over 30? When that happened?
It's funny. At the tables today, the one of the attendants had came up to me and she said, "Sir, I just need to know if you're over 21." And I was like,
"Fuck yeah!"
Wait. I was like, "Me?"
Like, oh, thank you.
Really? She's like, "Yeah, you just need to say yes or no." And I was like, "Are you asking me that question? Like, you just made my life." Great to see you both. The state of the security market. This can go in many different.
We'll take one where it goes. Yeah,
let's go full spice.
Okay, so first, I think we're kind of at like a pivotal moment where the nature of cybersecurity largely hasn't changed at all. Like we still have this, you go to the floor in Black Hat and we're still talking about the same things we've been talking about, since the late 90s.
They just get rebranded.
They just get rebranded. Right. I mean, I remember when Zero Trust came out, like suddenly RSA and Black Hat was like Zero Trust. And everything is agentic. But this is the first time where like, I actually do think we are on the cusp of another major technology paradigm being unlocked, which is largely centered around AI. But given the nature that it can't perform the way that we wish it can perform today, we still have quite a few problems to solve before we're going to see mass adoption in the enterprise or in organizations largely. Like today, I've at Google, for example, like some of the early features that they had launched when I was there was around using AI for natural language search, so that in Chronicle or in other tools you could ask questions in natural language, automatically turn that into a search query, and also around summarization, like summarizing insights, summarizing lots of different pieces of data to contextualize it for users. Like these are good early use cases, but like a lot of the marketing is around total like autonomous.
Yeah.
And you're gonna hate me for being the autonomic security guy, but you could blame Phil Venables for that one.
Yes, okay.
He's the one that came up with the name autonomic. But there's a lot of language around going fully autonomous. I think we're still quite a ways away from like solving some fundamental like limitations of AI and agents today, largely around making sure that they're reliable, making sure that they're deterministic, making sure that they accurately report on the right answers at the right times. But the market largely seems to be evolving. I saw Wiz just announced the whole exposure management product. It seems like that seems to be a hot growing space that people are trying to get their hands on. SIM is still largely SIM. We're seeing this big convergence of the big hyperscalers, Palo, Google, Microsoft. Like they've got a lot of cash. They've got a lot of money to spend. They can buy up. They can wait till the market's mature and then eventually buy someone up.
Yeah.
Right. But in terms of the problems, like we're still seeing the large trends of like the usual stuff: too many signals, too much context. not enough capability to be able to rationalize all this different signal so that we can get to insights faster. And most importantly, like security teams not actually helping understand business risk or even collaborate across the business to improve the business metrics, drive developer velocity, reduce organizational risk, be extremely strategic in the board. And so like we kind of have, we still have some legacy problems and a big ways to go before
do you think those problems you just mentioned are due to the state of the CISO incumbents currently?
When you say the CISO incumbents,
sorry, the people in seat right now who are CISOs that are protecting their own interests from an organization standpoint, right? Buckle up.
Don't get me started here.
Buckle up.
All right. So like in terms of like being a little controversial, we historically, security people are natural skeptics. We're all skeptics.
Yeah.
That's why we do what we do. We're always skeptics. We're super analytical as well. And so like, when we do things, we want to make sure we do them right. We're oftentimes investigating really complex adversarial activity and trying to understand, putting pieces together to make sure, we can identify the needle in the haystack. We're naturally very skeptical people. But I think this is the time where if we think about the last several decades of the CISO function, like every time I open up LinkedIn, someone's like, "Oh, CISOs need to be executives. They need to be on the board."
Right.
CISOs can no longer be these junior executives that report up to a chief legal officer or IT or CTO or something. But I'm like, well, it just so turns out that for 30 years, people are getting breached, but the companies still remain, still exist. They're getting breached, but they still exist. So like, taking that in mind, how do we continue to be, how do we step up to being an extremely valuable piece of an organization? Like if you're Uber,
yes.
You're sitting here and you're thinking about, oh shit, I got to compete against Waymo. I got to compete against Tesla. Like these guys are going to put us all out of business, right? But you go into your board meeting with your CISO and it's like, hey, we've got like 180 misconfigurations in Wiz. We've got 30,000 alerts per month in Splunk. Like, we need to figure out how we can be a lot more strategic in driving the business.
It just seems like maybe it's not the caring, but it's like definitely the disconnection, right? There's that like we're just two different languages, right? Because you're talking about the strategy of the executive team. You actually were bringing this up the other days too. One of our other conversations is that like we have executives. The purpose of being an executive is you are constantly making risk-based calculus day in and day out. There's dollars, time, attention. What's your market share? Is this the right product launch? Do we focus on left? Do we go right? And they're constantly doing it all the while. Like many security leaders are just trying to get their spreadsheet to look the right way to then do the thing. And we're like, the velocity of security, risk-based decisions happening in the executive team, and like the way the CISO today is showing up, I hold the view that there's a little bit of like growing up that might be needed across our board. Across our industry, we do see like people who are exceptional in the role of the CISO, but largely it's like heads of IT security that we see across the market.
And I think it's almost like a little like self-deprecating and a little subservient of like, cool, here's my presentation. Can I have some money, please? Shake the tin cup, and then I'll see you guys in a year.
Fear-based marketing.
Yeah, pretty much, right? Like, hey, let's not be that. It does crack me up. I think it's the TV show with Rob McElhenney with Mythic Quest, and he's like, oh, we got breached. He's like, fuck yeah. Like, he's like, no, that's not good. And he's like, oh no, every company gets breached. We finally made it. And he's like, and they're like, name 100 companies. And he's like, Target, Best Buy, like everyone's been breached. So it's awesome. If you haven't seen that show, it's dumb, but great episode. Taking a step aside, security.
You had something good, which you mentioned that I think we should talk about is fear-based marketing.
Okay.
Because this is actually a really important point. Like the fear-based marketing has worked really well because when we can go into board meetings and talk about how we're consistently under attack by highly sophisticated adversaries, and our intelligence is showing us X, Y, and Z, and we're dealing with 30,000 alerts a month in our environments, and our teams are not staffed and all that. Like selling that story sometimes helps alleviate, or sometimes helps capture budget, and justification of purchase tools and stuff. This works really well. It has worked really well, but it's also by the way, this hasn't just worked well with CISOs. I'll give you another story. You know, just a little while ago, there was a man touting that AGI is 2 years away, and that, you know, when AGI comes, the whole world's going to change. And in order to, you know, counter this, we need $7 trillion to build more data center capacity and infrastructure. Like, this whole story of selling fear is consistently applied. I mean, I have a Tesla. I've been being told that full autonomous self-driving is
weeks away, 6 weeks
away for the past decade of my life. You know?
Yeah. And it is interesting. And you look at like the AI companies, right? Hey, you'll never have to hire again. Who's hiring the most people?
Yeah.
Funny.
Right.
Fascinating. And on that topic, you've done some public speaking recently where you talk about kind of this almost like next version of self. And I think it's about who you are and what it means in this new AI world that we're stepping into. I'd love to kind of delve into that a little bit more.
Deep.
Was deep.
I'm gonna need another liquid death for this. Yeah, so I don't know. I get really I digress a lot. By the way, I was talking about CISOs being skeptics.
Yes.
And I totally digressed from what the opportunity is today about, you know, with AI. And to wrap up and summarize that piece, the whole idea I have in mind is that the idea was we're natural skeptics. We're being skeptics about this technology, but we also are not very strategic in enabling the business. Well, this is the first time, or this is another one of those moments where, like, we can take this and say, okay, great. Well, if we help drive the adoption of this technology and help solve some of those problems around AI's reliability, around making it secure, safe, privacy, all these sort of things, then we can, for the first time, security teams can actually help drive massive amounts of growth in revenue, like total alignment to the business. And if we do that, and if we lead the race in driving the adoption of AI inside of an organization, then the security teams will never have to worry about their own job security.
Yeah.
And just to riff on that for a second, like I see there's where is like the principal place that AI can show up really well right now is like coding. Like coding is a really like, does it compile? Does it not compile? You get a really tight feedback loop on that. But the problem is we see like 40% of code that's being generated by these co-pilots is vulnerable code, right? And I'm like, so to your point, the security team could show up and be like, hey, we're gonna get excellent at understanding how this technology works. We're gonna try and get all these co-pilots, like build up the scaffolding so that we've got good alignment during the time you're writing the code. You've got good checks along the way. You know, we've got good runtime controls. And if the security team does that, then they would basically bless the engineering team, like run faster and do more. That, to your point, would be an opportunity for us to really would change the relationship, I think, between security and engineering security and the outcomes that you get from shipping that software.
Yeah, and I don't want to lose that question either, so we'll get there. Back. But this is actually a really important point. Like, if you remember security and how this whole industry started, security largely started because people were curious about the limits of systems and how to exploit systems and how to use systems in abusive ways. Yeah. And that's spurred up the creation of this whole entire world around cybersecurity. And similarly, like, there is that opportunity right now with AI where we're like, this is a really incredible piece of technology, but like, there hasn't been enough security researchers to go and break this thing apart to figure out how we can make it more reliable, how we can improve how we can protect against some of the unreliable aspects of it.
Yes.
If we do that, then, well, the opportunity is for us to safely introduce the adoption of like large levels of automation inside of an enterprise, which have direct impact on margins for organizations, which allow organizations to build new product and service offerings, which immediately translate to revenue opportunities. And in that case, then you're like, holy crap, like the security team was instrumental in my company staying alive.
Yeah.
Versus, I'm Fortune, I'm Kellogg or whoever, I'm just this legacy manufacturing company that got ate alive by, a modern competitor,
So do you think the security teams should be focusing more on like the implementation of the security, or should we be a little earlier in the process where we're like kicking the crap out of the AI and trying to figure out like what are the breaking points? And we should be, as an industry, focused more on pushing the boundaries of the LLM, like getting more into that red teaming, more into that, or or does that still say like it's really specialized?
Probably going to take the punches so that like you go first basically to get shot and punch so that the engineers and you basically, it feels like we're just shoveling the shit so other people can get through, right? And that's what I think it has to look like, is really having those folks be able to kind of, security leaders go first, get shot at so that the guys that make the money come through, right? Is that your thought process too?
Yeah, let's see. So like in many ways, we obviously do still want to be skeptical by trying to adopt this technology for like high risk use cases. Like for example, you know, any autonomous SOC solution that like I don't know if any of the autonomous SOC vendors have successfully displaced like super high risk use cases in the enterprise just yet. But like these types of things, we always want to approach with caution. But like there are plenty of opportunities inside of a security organization where the use cases are very similar to the use cases in a developer organization.
Right.
That may not be, you know, making sure that we're displacing our current signals and alerts, but rather like solving some process efficiency problems and like trying to figure out how we can start to use this technology ourselves. That way we can understand where the gaps are, where the limitations are. So we're not just waiting on vendors to come and tell us, you know, what to do and what not to do, and then being skeptical when the products don't deliver, but rather like the teams and the CISOs are constantly staying afloat on how this technology is being adopted. It's like when the internet first came out, like imagine everyone still had pen and paper, you know,
filing cabinets,
pen and paper everywhere, and you know, databases were giant, you know, storage bins that you had to open with your thumb, right? And at the time, there was like a lot of consultants that would get hired from the Deloittes of the world to come and teach people how to use the internet. Right.
Yes.
It's like we're at that stage right now where like, you know, maybe we don't need to go and hire a bunch of consultants, but maybe we need to go and just
probably will. I'm sure that the big four will make a fortune out of telling people to move to AI. Like you watch the golf, right? Like I think it's a great example of like who are they marketing at, and it's like IBM and Deloitte commercials that's targeted at CEOs, CFOs of like how this boring corporation moved to AI and transformed their business. It's like, no, you fucking didn't.
Well,
like,
OpenAI has a massive revenue arm in just doing consulting and helping enterprises. Kind of like, and they don't, you know, their deal size is 10 million. As a minimum deal size is 10 million. Yeah, it was brand new. And so there's, you know, there's commentary about that. But I just think it's interesting. You're right. It's like there is a moment where security leaders could be in the space of being like, all right, let's go after this and like, let's help the business go forward.
I've, by the way, I've certainly been consulting on AI, MCP, and LLMs and adopting AI. So this is it's funny and near and dear to me because I get calls to like come and like talk about some of the basics of this technology and like where we could apply it within organizations. And it's always really interesting, like when you like where you think people are today versus like most people have probably just used vanilla chat GPT
right,
and not really dove into the art of the possible of
Where should they start? Actually, let's go there. Like if you are you're a security officer at a company and you really want to share with your teams, like the mandate, we are going to lead the charge. We are going to be the people in the organization who are going to be excellent in this technology and start thinking through reintegrating AI into our security operations, using that word as broadly as possible. Where would you suggest they start? Where would you suggest they start learning? How do we become those experts inside the organization?
So I'm going to digress a little bit and tell you a story about how I thought through this problem before and how we can apply it today in AI. So like at Google, I authored the autonomic security operations framework and the continuous detection, continuous response methodology, CDCR. And the reason I like got super inspired to create this thing was because there was all this signal where customers would come to us and they would say, hey, we're talking to your Chronicle reps, but really we just want to be more like Google. How do we be more like Google? And so I kept hearing that signal, and I went in and I got approval from, our internal CISO to give me access to all the leads inside of Alphabet so I can study how Alphabet secures Alphabet. And one of the things I noticed was a lot of the people that ran Alphabet's uh, detection team, the insider threat program, and a bunch of other leads there, they were all former site reliability engineers.
Hmm.
So they all came from Ben Trainor's team. Ben Trainor is the guy who invented site reliability engineering. So, and I'm going to tie all this together to AI now. So, so this was really interesting for me. I was like, okay, we had this massive problem where like we had too much signal. We had barely any automation in place. The alert pipeline was continuing to grow because back in 2012, Google was still acquiring dozens of companies a year, and Alphabet's estate's growing massively, right? So like, how do we get ahead of this problem, right? Where like we've got this massive operational load that's continuing to increase, but like we really need to start looking at this like an engineering problem, not an operational problem, right? And so they brought on these former SREs that were not security folks, come in there and treat our alert pipeline like an engineering problem. Now, this resulted in tremendous efficiencies for Google. Like at a high level, I can say efficiencies, but in the nitty gritty, I mean, these are like this spurred the creation of programs that were like transformative and highly technical to Google's like security engineering posture, right? Like singular things that have led to large transformative impacts for Alphabet, right? But I went and I synced up with Ben Trainor, and I was asking Ben about the early days of like site reliability engineering, because I knew there's this problem where like people need to treat this like an eng problem, but they won't, right? It's like we're going to keep having this operational toil. So Ben told me, he's like, back in 2004, 2005, he's like, there was a couple things that were going for me. He's like, I had managerial overhead over management oversight over a team of traditional IT ops people, and they dealt with everything very operationally, right? And we tried all sorts of different experiments to try to get people to think differently, but all of them ultimately didn't do that well. They all kind of failed. He's like, but I had management oversight over my team. So what did I do? He's like, well, we started to introduce changes to our performance monitoring, our metrics, like perf and everything else, so that we started to require all of our operational people to start to build, like solve efficiency problems for like 10% of their work. And now they have to report on it. Now they get tracked on it. Now their pay is tied to them nailing their frameworks. And suddenly, when you do that, it's like a forcing function to get people to think differently.
Yep.
Yes.
So tying that all back to like today, the one biggest thing I always tell people is I'm like, there's a lot of vendors that are trying to solve singular use cases, but the opportunity, if you're a CISO, is to figure out how you can create the incentive structure to get your organization to start looking at problems differently. And the only way you're going to do that is not just by like doing all of like the exciting stuff. Let's have champion programs. Let's like Wiz. I saw Wiz today. They mentioned every month they have someone do like a show and tell thing where they talk about something that they automated, but rather like figuring out how we can weave that into people's performance plans. That way you get people to start now having to think in their off times about, oh shit, I need to nail this so that I get paid.
Yeah. And people will behave based on their incentive and merit structures, right? It just is what it is.
Isn't the quote that's attributed to Sinclair, and it's like, it's hard to get someone to care about something when their paycheck requires them to be ignorant about it. And it's just like the inverse of that. If you want it to be important, tie their paycheck to it.
Right.
Yeah. I've often thought about like, could you fix that with just like traditional like security problems, right? If you took security on an engineering perspective and like framed it as a quality problem, and then took that as part of a quality score and gave it back to engineering and said, hey, we're really going to benchmark you on the quality of what comes out. And then you would have an entire engineering organization like thinking about like, how do I make sure like cross-site scripting never shows up in my application again? How do I change the libraries or change the deployment frameworks
Yeah, right.
we're using for?
But then, on the flip side of that is like, Well, you also have to make sure you have the right people that can take on that type. Like, for example, many years ago, early on in my career, I used to work in a data center, and like I would close tickets all day, and I deal with tickets, and I'd go in and I'd take out racks and swap motherboards, and I'd be like, and I was a legendary ticket closer. Like when it came to the charts, like I was closing.
You were
going
going
to
win at those tickets. Yes, yes.
I was going to win at those tickets, but I was also very junior back then, and like so if you forced me in the wrong way to try to solve an efficiency problem, then I probably didn't have the technical skills back then to be able to solve the right efficiency problems.
Okay.
So you have to be really thoughtful in how you introduce changes to people's job functions.
Yeah.
That's attainable. Like
Right.
you always have to be setting attainable goals that force people to stretch. So that way you can, and then the aggregate, the culmination of, 50 call center people who now suddenly have like a 5% project that requires them to solve one tiny little efficiency problem.
Yeah.
When 50 people are doing that, then suddenly you start to see, major gains in, efficiencies and that sort of stuff.
And there's almost a prerequisite to all of us. And you said it in passing a few moments ago. And that is like, how does the CEO or the chief security officer get the business to think about doing it differently? And it's that piece of like thinking differently about this, because when I'm engaging with people and I'm finding that many people in the security industry are trying to say, I have this problem that was defined a decade ago and this process that was defined a decade ago. And now I'm going to keep this process and I want to pull out a human and put in some AI thing here. And I wonder if that is not part of that's going to hold us back, because if we did what you're suggesting here, we would think about it differently, maybe coming from first principles. We say, here's the outcome. We work backwards to that. I just didn't want to get that. I didn't want to get that thought. Did not want that thought to get lost about the need to think differently.
Yeah. And I do think we all, as a security industry, we all talk to each other about the problem, right? So we've got our own echo chamber. We're so good about telling each other where we should sit and how we should fix things. But I do think that outside lens, from a like different teams thinking about security, whether it's merit structures or whatever, but getting an engineer's lens or an operator's lens to come in and fix security problems versus the same people that we see at these conferences that are doing the same talks. Like we do just continue, and it is security by theory shouldn't exist, right? Like if we just did a really good job in engineering and whatever, and everything was perfect. And so I think there is a little bit of, hey, we don't want to be too good. And in the same way that like, you don't want people to be too healthy, because then there's no health insurance. That's a different, very, very different topic that I could go on a tangent on. So yeah, I think there is a little bit of, hey, we don't want to be too good at this, because what if we fix it?
This actually is a really interesting point. It's like, I always say like the CISO function to me, and I'm very controversial here, but I will say in a perfect setting, the CISO function should never have anyone that deals with preventative risk. The CISO function should just handle detection and response, because the highest value that a CISO can provide, or a security organization can provide today, is mitigating breaches in progress, mitigating the financial impact of a breach. It's a very highly political thing, knowing how to handle an incident response, knowing how to reduce the financial impact of an incident to the organization. Like, these are really, really important. These are like foundational pieces that are like non-security people cannot do. If a company gets hacked, well, you should know how to manage the breach so that you reduce the business impact to the organization, whether that's operational disruptions, financial impact, all that sort of stuff. That is like super, super, super high value work. But preventative security, like you said, theoretically, I mean, security teams don't actually own the assets. They don't stand up the servers that have the misconfigurations or the vulnerable or the unpatched environments or the vulnerable, infrastructure. Like, they don't stand up that infrastructure. So what happens a lot of times when people talk about shift left is they run into a lot of organizational friction. Because why? Because one part of the security's function is advisory to the business, and the other part is detection and response. Detection and response is like pure play security stuff, but preventative risk reduction is an advisory function. It's like, hey, we've identified these patterns. We need to go and solve this. This is a major risk pattern for the organization. We need to patch better. We need to like solve this problem across the organization. But then there's a lot of friction that gets created.
Right.
Because then you get security people to go and try to talk to developers.
Mm.
Security people don't understand the nature of their work, how fast they're trying to move, their own incentive structures, how they're being comped and paid. They also don't even understand the assets, the infrastructure a lot of times, depending on the organization. And this creates a lot of internal friction.
That's really interesting. That's a good point. If you look at like the market from just like the amount of companies, just by volume, there's going to be always a top end of the market, which are large companies, true enterprises, alphabet-sized companies, like big enterprises. And I can see in that space, there would always be a dedicated like CISO there. I wonder, get your thoughts on this. Do you see a world where like below that threshold, that mythical threshold, that because of that friction, that operational friction, that we actually start to see a collapse of the CISOs in the mid to low market, and where CISOs become like a specialized commodity, a specialized executive for large enterprises, but at below a certain watermark, any company that's smaller than that in like headcount, revenue, or complexity, they decide that, hey, we're going to collapse technology operations or engineering operations and the security leader into one. And does the CISO go away in the mid-market? I know it's kind of a leading question, so feel free to challenge it, but what is your thoughts on the future of the CISO?
So there are probably a billion different ways this answer can go, because in a perfect world, things would look very different. But the reality of the world is it's not perfect. If AI helps solve a lot of those imperfections, then that'll potentially lead to some directionality with the CISO function in smaller organizations. But currently, it seems that obviously every single company has different DNA. Every single company has a different level of technicality. Every single company has different leadership, and like there's so much variability in the structure of companies where like you kind of see everything, right? Like I've seen highly technical engineering first companies that are like digital natives, like big, super well-known companies that hired a CISO, built out a massive security presence, also built out a preventative security presence as well, all under the CISO, but then eventually realized that the culture set by the CISO for the preventative security function was not as good as the CTO who owns all of that infrastructure. So they collapsed a lot of those headcounts back into the CTO function and stripped the CISO away from that, right? I've seen the opposite. I've seen CISOs that are highly technical, that know how to lead and run organizations and teams extremely well. And so like, their preventative security teams are like incredible advisors to organizational risk and like work really well with, the people that actually build organizational assets. So like in terms of directionally, like, ideally, if we think of like, if we think of the concept of being a consulting or advisory function,
Right.
then ideally we find some way to distribute or propagate that knowledge through all of this amazing AI technology that's eventually going to get good. In that case, any advisory or consulting type of capabilities, we should hopefully be able to solve with technology. But detection and response still, theoretically, like, because adversaries continue to play cat and mouse, and you get better, they get better, you get better, they get
the
better.
technology
And
too, right? It's not just for us.
that world is never going to change, because it's always going to get more sophisticated. It's going to get more complex. No matter how much of the alert pipeline we automate, the adversaries are going to continue finding ways to evade.
Right.
And so that world, to me, I think is just permanently growing. I mean, philosophically, it's also permanently growing, because like, technology is the foundation of our democracy. Technology is the bedrock of how we do everything. Right. And so, in the future, like security is already paramount. Had all these services that exist today that support all of our critical infrastructure functions and all that not been secure, they wouldn't be able to provide the services to the end users. So, yeah.
So let's take that one step further, because there is, like, you're right, there is this predator-prey dynamic that is going on. And we have to remember that in this scenario, in this conversation, we're the prey, not the predator, right? And we're constantly moving forward. I'd love to get your take on, where is AI showing up for the predator? Where is AI showing up for the threat actor in this? And maybe like where it is today, or where do you think it's going to go? Where do you think they're going to get their leverage? They're going to get their operational efficiencies when they start to use this technology.
Oh, and before I make everyone unhappy, I need to clarify one thing. On the preventative security side, that being said, all those things being said, is if you've ever touched SAP or Oracle or anything, you're going to realize that the world we have today is going to exist for a very long time.
Yes.
You know, like we're not going to see a future where AI is just going to totally take over, you know,
People haven't
risk
got
and
SharePoint
advisory.
figured out yet.
Yeah, like
Cobalt still exists as a language that is running mainframes.
yeah. We'll check back in like 30 years.
Yeah.
You know, once Brian Johnson cracks the code to life, immortality, we'll check back in 70 years, and hopefully we'll all have nice hair and everything.
I hope so.
But going back to your question on the where does AI play in today with adversaries?
Oh.
I mean, I can't speak on behalf of this because I haven't been doing all the black hat work that, you know, I used to do before I was 18.
Censored.
There's a statute of limitations. You're fine.
Yeah, but what I have to guess, is the nature of, look, there's a lot of stuff that gets built that we will have no knowledge of, that gets leveraged when needed and suddenly becomes, you know, like, for example, take Pegasus spyware, right? Like, right. Like Pegasus has probably existed for a very long time.
Yeah.
Very, very, very long time. Right. But like, you know, you don't want to reveal your tools.
Yeah, you press play when the moment is
like,
right.
Like there's script kiddies that are like, oh, we're doing lots of script kiddie stuff, or they were just trying to do credential stuffing, or we're trying to find passwords on Pastebin and trying to go and do, you know, get access to things and resell it to other users and all that stuff. But then like the real stuff, we will probably not have much knowledge of, because the real stuff probably is already being deployed in places, hiding, you know, in plain sight. And one day when it's needed to be executed, I mean, think about this, like how, like just take competitive intel, right? Like corporate espionage, right?
Was it Ramp and what was the other one? Not
Deal?
Ramp, Deal, and sat in there sharing screenshots.
Yeah. Take corporate espionage, right? Like, for example, AI aside, there could be lots of employees hired at companies that are sponsored by competing adversaries, corporations, nation states, that could be persisting, you know, floating around inside of companies, getting promoted, you know.
Well, DTEX released their report, and that, like, it was the North Korean report, and they got, I think, 30,000 people fired.
Right.
And that's the people they found. Right. So that's just from an insider threat perspective. And look, I'm on the hiring side, right? I see this. I talk to some candidates and I'm like, you're not you. Like, there's no fucking way. And weirdly, human resources and hiring has never been a bigger security problem than it is right now. And it's fascinating to watch out. And personally, I'm pumped about it. It's opportunity for me, but it's scary for organizations to hire somebody who, again, could sit dormant for like a spy, right? You could sit on cover for years,
their lifetime.
Yeah,
I mean, that's spying has been one of the early forms of like human espionage. It's been around forever.
Yes,
and like, you know, they're you know, God knows how many Google employees are like, you know, spies for other companies. I mean, how is it that like every time? It's so funny. I always think about this. I'm like, every time someone's about to release a major AI announcement, everyone else already has their announcement staged.
Yeah.
like this week, Google released the big video image thing. You create whole worlds and walk around and experiment. And that same day, OpenAI was like, sorry, we're actually releasing open source. You know, OpenAI, our model's open source. Forget about all your news. And obviously, I'm sure that's not corporate espionage. I'm sure everyone knows each other's.
I'm sure it's just coincidental every single time. Yes.
No, they
they
probably, because like planning all these launch events takes a lot of coordination. So at some point in time, people all will have an idea of like when people
there is an Occam's razor, which is like we tend to operate around an annual calendar, and we have major events, and the people have vacations, and like you kind of like line up all these corporate things that lead to announcements lining up. I'm sure there's something there.
It's all the restaurants and nightclubs. They're like, cool, OpenAI coming in on Thursday. Shock, like probably leaking that info.
If I was an AI today, I wouldn't be sitting here sending malware to people. I wouldn't be sitting here like trying to get people's services shut down. I'd just be sitting here mining people's data stores to figure out what's happening in the company, so that I can just, and certain users and all their docs, just so I can like, and all that
Yeah.
data to just try to figure out like what's happening so that I can stay afloat ahead of
Yeah.
the competitors, right? Like,
People are, I mean, look, people give everything away to these models, right? Like they give away all of the corporate
and
info.
models
It's
are
fucking crazy. Like, hey, I mean, here's my whole life. Here's our contract report with this, $600 million deal. And you're like, cool, ChatGPT, please reread this and help me correct. And it's like, you could be giving that deal to OpenAI, who may go and then get the deal themselves, right? So it's crazy. Or they could be selling it. We don't know. Like, it's fascinating the level of trust that people operate with these models because it feels familiar.
yeah. Yeah. People are like, my dog's, I think my dog's cheating on me, and then one day Stu's going to get that signal in a job interview and he's going to be like looking at a candidate and he's going to get some intel from some third party service. And it's going to be like, John's dog cheated on him.
Yeah.
And he's going to look at him and he's going to tell me about your dog.
Tell me about, is he still with you?
Is he still, is he at the dog
did he
park?
leave?
Is he at the dog park with another owner?
I love it.
All right, mate. So I got one more technically oriented question for you tonight for Annabex too. And that is around one of the things I'm seeing is like when organizations are deploying AI workloads on their environment, Kubernetes is like the technology lingua franca. Like I'm seeing a lot of that. I'm curious your thoughts as a defender, as somebody who is helping this business trying to move faster and get workloads running in their cloud environments. What are some of like the patterns? What are some of the ways that we as security leaders should be thinking about running these workloads safely, right? And how do we start protecting these workloads from these adversaries? If you've got perspectives on that, I'd love to hear.
Of course, the SysDig guy
Yeah.
asks about running cloud native workloads.
100%. I mean,
This is going straight on the
He's
website.
like,
I've got Iman on the podcast. Let's go.
oh man. So cloud native workloads, container based, obviously the cloud still has a ways to go for penetrating on-prem environments. I think like largely the direction of the future, we're going to continue seeing a growth towards cloud native workloads for certain things, but I also think we're going to see a massive shift back towards on-premise environments because people want sovereignty, people want control.
Also cheaper now as well.
Yeah, and I think with AI, I think most importantly, people realize like, oh, it's really important for us to try to own our own models, our own infrastructure, like, and so I think we're going to see a massive proliferation of all sorts of workloads, in the world, and especially in countries that historically are not like America or like third world countries that are also trying to maybe don't have $1 billion to spend to get Google inside of their countries, but rather like want to spend some money and get some basic cloud infrastructure so that they could drive GDP for their nation. But in terms of like securing ephemeral environments, like this has been a big challenge for a lot of defenders. And there's a lot of good vendors out there, that are working on the different parts of this problem. There's container infrastructure, there's the supply chain itself, there's runtime of containers. And yes, I've heard this consistently with CISOs that like they really need to have a better idea of how to protect their environments that are spinning up and spinning down, because things happen really fast. And when you're in the middle of an incident or an investigation and that environment's not there anymore, like how do we do the same sort of how do we follow the same protocols we follow with VM-based environments and container-based environments? I think there's a couple of there's a book coming out from a friend of mine that covers this topic in a lot of depth. Nick is writing, Nick from Snap. Yeah, he's writing this book on cloud native security, and like he is one of the guys. And when it comes to cloud native security, like I would say I defer to him. But his book's going to be a great one.
Nice.
And then there's also a lot of vendors that are doing really incredible stuff in this space. So I'm probably not the best person to
That's the Nick that I know.
It's the Nick that you know.
All right, he's a good guy. I like,
shout out.
Yeah, we'll make sure his book gets linked in the
He'll
conversation.
be listening. I hope he's listening to this episode in his McLaren right now.
although I keep getting a notification that's like the book's been delayed. I'm like, listen, man, do I need to come up there and chat GPT the rest of it for you?
Awesome.
Awesome. Well, Iman, thank you so much for your time today. Dude, I've loved the conversation.
Of course.
And it's been fantastic.
We totally missed Stu's.
Don't worry about it. You'll have to come back and tell us.
You'll have to sign up for the
sign
next
up.
session.
Yeah, premium.
We're going to get so philosophical. It's going to get deep and we're going to get dirty. Yeah.
Oh, Elon Joe Rogan.
It's been a pleasure,
Love it.
guys.
Thanks, bud.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for coming on. It's been great having you. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, guys.